I went to my son's wedding as a proud single father, but my place card said uneducated imposter dad. The bride's relatives chuckled, until my son declared, "Dad, let's head home." The following day, their business encountered a surprise they never anticipated. I positioned myself at the rear of that elegant ballroom in central Chicago, adjusting my off-the-rack suit that always felt a bit off. 22 years. That's the duration since Sarah departed, abandoning me with a weeping toddler and a pile of debts. 22 years of laboring in building sites by day and restocking aisles at a hardware store by night. 22 years of pasta meals and thrift store outfits. But we managed, my boy Trevor and I, and now here we stood, sparkling chandeliers spreading warm glow over settings that likely exceeded my rent payments. Attendees in luxury dresses enjoying bubbly I couldn't name. Trevor's marriage ceremony. My heart filled with joy as I observed my son, tall and dashing in his tailored suit, chatting with his new wife's kin near the music area. I headed to the relatives' table, looking for my spot. The bride's kin, the Hawthorns, had pulled out all the stops. Even the place markers featured gilded text. I located mine without trouble, Austin Mitchell, father of the groom. But below, someone had inscribed something in refined handwriting with what seemed like a metallic marker, uneducated imposter dad. My veins chilled. Certainly this was an error. But then I caught it, the giggling from the opposite side. Dr. Richard Hawthorne, the bride's dad and a prominent heart specialist at Northwestern Memorial, was grinning behind his Scotch tumbler. His spouse Victoria had her polished nails covering her mouth, attempting to stifle her amusement. Their son Bradford bent toward his relative and murmured something that caused them both to erupt in laughter while gazing straight at me. "Well, what were you anticipating?" I overheard Dr. Hawthorne tell his wife. "The guy constructs homes for work. Likely quit school early to handle a youthful mishap." My fingers trembled as I discreetly turned the place card downward and attempted to settle. But the harm was inflicted. The mirth propagated like a blaze across their portion of the table. 22 years of dedication, 22 years of serving as both parent to Trevor, diminished to a punchline for their delight. I rose, prepared to depart with whatever self-respect remained. But right as I pivoted toward the door, a strong grip seized mine. "Dad." Trevor's tone was soft but firm. His gaze locked with mine, and I noticed a fire there, something absent since he was 12 and confronted tormentors at Jefferson Elementary. "Let's head home. Trevor, it's your nuptials." "Let's head home," he restated more audibly this time. The musicians halted midway through a tune. Discussions faded. 300 invitees pivoted to gawk as my son directed his attention to the Hawthorne relatives' table and stated plainly, "You've all committed the gravest error of your existence." He didn't shout, didn't clarify, simply exited that ballroom alongside me, abandoning his spouse and her kin astonished behind us. And the subsequent day altered all. The ride back to my modest flat in Rogers Park was utterly quiet save for the buzz of Trevor's Tesla, a vehicle that still unsettled me each time I viewed it. He acquired it last year via his technology position, though he'd always been evasive about the specifics. My son maintained his focus on Lakeshore Drive, teeth gritted as Lake Michigan extended shadowy and vast next to us. Not a syllable until we arrived at my structure, the identical 3-level climb where I'd nurtured him, where the heater still rattled in cold months and Mrs. Rodriguez above still blasted her soap operas excessively. As I searched for my keys, Trevor eventually shattered the quiet. "You know, Dad, I witnessed it. I stiffened. The place card, I spotted it prior to you. I was observing from the edge when Bradford's relative penned it. I was anticipating your reaction. My spirit dropped. Then why didn't you intervene? Why didn't you speak up earlier?" Trevor regarded me with a look I hadn't seen since his mom departed. Unfiltered anguish blended with something tougher, frostier. Because I required confirmation if they'd truly proceed. If they'd genuinely degrade the individual who reared me on the most crucial day of my existence. His words faltered a bit. And they did. He retrieved his iPhone and displayed a recording. Surveillance video somehow. Dr. Hawthorne chortling as he passed the metallic marker to Bradford's relative. Victoria quipping about lower-class folks mingling with refined society. And most appalling, Trevor's bride Stephanie herself agreeing and remarking, "My true partner is the one I'm wedding for wealth. That builder? He's merely an obligation." I felt as if I'd been struck in the stomach. But Trevor, he was composed as frost. "Dad, there's information I withheld from you. I never endorsed their prenuptial agreement." I stared. "You didn't." "They implored me to. Dr. Hawthorne even proposed funding my small tech venture if I'd agree. Trevor's smirk was keen as a blade. But by that point, I'd already developed something, discreetly with my university housemate Jake. A digital protection enterprise named Fortress Digital. My thoughts spun. Trevor, what are you implying? Last year, Microsoft purchased us. Straightforward transaction, all currency. He met my gaze directly. I earned $47 million, Dad. Sufficient to acquire and dispose of the whole Hawthorne clan holdings if I desired. I collapsed heavily onto my worn sofa, the identical one where I'd assisted him with assignments for 12 years. Trevor activated his computer. They believed they were obtaining a decorative spouse, some innocent youth they could shape and dominate. What they failed to grasp is that I'd been strategizing deeply while they were engaged in superficial games. His digits danced across the keys, and tomorrow dawn they're going to discover whom they attempted to disgrace. I arose at 5 a.m. to the aroma of brewed coffee. Genuine brew, not the quick mix I typically prepared. Trevor was already attired in a deep blue outfit that likely surpassed my vehicle's value, positioned at my kitchen surface with a hefty envelope akin to a directory. Today's the moment, Dad. Today they comprehend who you truly represent to me, not some phony parent, but the individual who shaped me into all I embody. He presented the envelope. Within were fiscal summaries, possession papers, and business records. The Hawthorne family enterprise, Hawthorne Hospitality Group, a network of upscale lodgings and eateries throughout the Midwest, was hemorrhaging funds. Silently, urgently. And Trevor had been acquiring their undisclosed partner portions for the prior year via proxy firms with titles like Fortress Holdings and Mitchell Investment Trust. You already possess segments of their firm? I murmured. Trevor's smile was predatory. Attempt 48%. And starting at 9 a.m. today, when the Henderson Retirement Fund transfers me their 12% portion, I'll command the bulk. 9:15 a.m. Hawthorne Hospitality Central in the loop. Trevor entered that transparent skyscraper as if he controlled it, which I was beginning to understand he essentially did. Front desk staff paused mid-conversation, their mouths agape as they identified the builder's offspring from the matrimonial fiasco that was already rumor central. The conference room was crowded. Dr. Hawthorne occupied the lead of that glossy wooden table, still donning the prior day's haughtiness like a costly scent. What's the purpose of this? He snapped as Trevor serenely claimed a chair and set that substantial envelope on the surface. Trevor's tone was solid as rock. As of now, I dominate 51% of Hawthorne Hospitality Group. Here's the evidence. You're welcome to have your attorneys confirm. The hush was profound. Then emerged the mutters, the urgent calls, the shuffling of documents as Dr. Hawthorne's palms quivered while examining the verification of his domain's fresh proprietorship. You insignificant leech, Dr. Hawthorne stammered, vessels protruding in his throat. Trevor remained unfazed. No, Richard, I'm the outcome of the person you ridiculed, the builder who erected this metropolis's horizon while you enjoyed leisure at exclusive clubs, the counterfeit parent who twalled 16-hour shifts so I could attend Northwestern, the identical institution where you instruct health students on principles. The conference room was utterly still. Allow me to be explicit, Trevor proceeded, shifting to speak to the other executives. I won't dismantle the firm today. But as of now, Dr. Hawthorne, his spouse, his offspring, and all kin are dismissed from every role. Guards will accompany you out. Your exit benefits will be sent. Dr. Hawthorne surged ahead. You can't execute this. This is my enterprise, my dad's enterprise. Trevor's tone stayed even. It was your enterprise. Now it pertains to the person you labeled a phony parent. Via me. And with that, we departed, abandoning the Hawthorne heritage in ruins. The periods after what the Chicago Tribune termed the matrimonial vengeance acquisition were a vortex. Trevor's tale disseminated rapidly through online platforms and commercial networks. Titles varied from groom stun's affluent in-laws to from work helmet to aggressive acquisition. My son, once overlooked as a laborer's child, was now requested to lecture at Harvard Business School and highlighted on Entrepreneur magazine's front. Regarding Stephanie Hawthorne, she vanished from social media quicker than frost in summer. Her meticulously arranged existence of boat gatherings and high-end lunches faded abruptly. Buzz in Chicago indicated she and her folks were now confronting national probes for misappropriating resources and shady transactions that Trevor's audit experts had revealed during the purchase. But Trevor, he persisted in laboring, persisted in developing. He relocated his firm's base to a shining, fresh space in River North, but still visited my flat every Sunday for stew and baseball matches, akin to when he was a child. Then arrived that drizzly Thursday night in October when a rap sounded at my entrance. I unlatched it to discover Stephanie Hawthorne positioned in my corridor, drenched from the downpour, her upscale cosmetics streaking down her face like paints. "Mr. Mitchell," she uttered, her voice scarcely audible. "I must converse with Trevor." I summoned him. He materialized in the entry, glanced at her once, and his demeanor stayed unchanged. "Stephanie." "Trevor, I committed a grave error." The phrases spilled from her. I was under immense strain from my folks, from all. They constantly made me sense that you weren't sufficient, like your dad was inferior to us. But I comprehend now. Trevor lifted a palm, halting her midway. "You comprehend now that the individual you offended controls the structure you're facing." Her gaze expanded. She peered beyond him to me reclining on my aged sofa. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm deeply remorseful. I was immature and foolish and cease." My tone was gentle but resolute. "You're not remorseful for your actions, dear. You're remorseful for the consequences." She stood rigid like a startled animal. Trevor extracted a packet from his coat compartment. "Your folks endorsed this when they were frantic to sell off their leftover holdings. It's a restriction clause that bars any kin from operating in or possessing interests in any lodging venture in Illinois for the coming 20 years. He delivered it to her. "That encompasses you." Tears flowed down her cheeks. "Trevor, please, can't we simply discuss? Resolve something?" He regarded her one final time, and I observed in his gaze the identical serene fortitude I'd endeavored to instill in him those years past. "You had your opportunity to discuss, Stephanie. You selected derision over esteem. You opted for communal degradation over affection. Now I select my father's honor over your remorse." And he shut the entrance, softly but decisively. 6 months afterward, I was positioned in the premier row of the Chicago Hilton's vast hall. Not as a matrimonial attendee this occasion, but as the honored invitee. Trevor positioned at the lectern in a deep blue outfit, speaking to an assembly of Chicago's commercial leaders, municipal authorities, and grant awardees. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to reveal the initiation of the Austin Mitchell Foundation for Laboring Families Learning." The cheers were resounding. Mayor Johnson advanced to clasp Trevor's palm. "What motivated you to establish this grant initiative?" she inquired into the speaker. Trevor's gaze located mine amid the gathering. That individual there, Austin Mitchell. The one derided for constructing this metropolis manually. The one who held dual occupations so I could possess one. The person who instructed me that genuine value isn't gauged in finances or qualifications. It's assessed in honesty, commitment, and care. I sensed moisture in my eyes as 300 individuals stood in ovation. For the initial instance in my existence, I sensed like the wealthiest individual present. Following the event, Trevor and I strolled along the Chicago River pathway, the urban illumination flickering on the liquid like dispersed gems. "You didn't need to title it after me," I remarked softly. He halted strolling and pivoted to confront me. "Dad, all I represent, all I've constructed, persists because you trusted in me when no one else did. When Mom departed, when peers at school mocked my used garments, when advisors suggested I ponder practical vocation choices, you never ceased trusting." I reflected on that frightened lone parent I'd been 22 years prior, pondering how I'd ever nurture a child solo. Observing Trevor now, accomplished, ethical, robust, I comprehended I hadn't merely nurtured a son. I'd nurtured a man who recognized the distinction between wealth and value. Moreover, Trevor beamed. "I reckon it's time the Hawthorne kin grasped what an authentic heritage resembles." The foundation would proceed to supply complete grants to over 500 youths from laboring backgrounds. But that evening, strolling by the river with my son, I recognized I'd already obtained the utmost reward a parent could desire. 2 years elapsed, and existence stabilized into a pattern I'd never ventured to envision. Trevor's enterprise kept expanding, with branches now in New York and San Francisco. The foundation flourished, dispatching youths from origins like ours to institutions nationwide. And me. I still resided in my modest flat in Rogers Park, still operated my aged Ford F-150, still viewed baseball with Mrs. Rodriguez above. But I wasn't the identical individual who'd entered that matrimonial gathering with his mismatched outfit and injured self-esteem. I held myself distinctly now, not due to wealth, but because I'd discovered that a person's value isn't set by others' views. It's set by what he constructs, what he contributes, and whom he nurtures. Then arrived the call that would challenge all. Dad, you must view something. Trevor's tone was strained when he phoned that September dawn. Activate Channel 7 News. I seized my controller with unsteady palms. There on the display was a known visage. Dr. Richard Hawthorne, positioned outside the federal structure in central Chicago, surrounded by attorneys and recorders. Accusations of coverage deceit and revenue dodging covering 5 years, the journalist stated. The Hawthorne kin confronts possible incarceration and millions in fines. This arrives merely 2 years post their lodging domain being obtained in an aggressive acquisition by digital security tycoon Trevor Mitchell. I silenced the screen and redialed Trevor. How are you managing this? A prolonged silence ensued. Frankly, Dad, I feel hollow. I assumed I'd sense justified, you understand. But observing them disintegrate, thus witnessing Stephanie's offspring impacted by their guardian's decisions, it merely saddens me. That's when I recognized I'd nurtured him correctly. Vengeance might have been pleasing momentarily, but true power, true personality, signified knowing when to halt battling and commence mending. Son, I remarked softly, perhaps it's time to contemplate what follows. What do you wish to construct rather than what you wish to demolish? 5 years post that catastrophic nuptials, I discovered myself in another lavish hall, but this occasion all was altered. The Austin Mitchell Foundation's yearly celebration was occurring at the Palmer House, with over 800 attendees honoring our grant receivers. As I surveyed the space, I observed countenances that narrated a tale I was honored to participate in. Maria Santos, whose mom tidied offices, was now a trainee at Johns Hopkins. David Kim, whose dad operated a cab, was completing his MBA at Wharton. Sarah Williams, whose granddad had labored in construction beside me, was launching her own digital firm. Trevor ascended the platform to resounding cheers. At 30, he'd matured into the sort of individual I'd always aspired he'd become. Prosperous, certainly, but more vitally, benevolent and rooted. 5 years prior he commenced, my father and I exited a nuptials where folks chuckled at us for our identity. Tonight we honor not what separates us, but what connects us. The conviction that every youth merits an opportunity to aspire greatly, irrespective of origins. He hesitated, surveying the assembly, and I possess a declaration. The foundation is broadening. We're not solely financing higher education anymore. We're establishing training initiatives, vocational grants, and modest enterprise funding for laboring households. Because achievement isn't merely about obtaining a qualification, it's about constructing an existence of meaning and respect. The ovation was overwhelming, but what touched me most was what I noticed in the rear nook of the space. Stephanie Hawthorne, now Stephanie Walsh, rewedded to a secondary educator, was softly cheering. Her offspring, a lad and lass around 8 and 10, were seated nearby. She met my gaze and inclined her head, not in surrender but in what appeared like admiration. Post the event, she neared me warily. Mr. Mitchell, I desired to express gratitude. I arched a brow. Express gratitude. The foundation provided my daughter a grant for arts program last summer. She doesn't realize it originated from you, but I do. Her tone broke a little. After all I did, all my kin did, you still aided my child. I regarded this lady who had once chortled at my son's nuptials, who had termed me a phony parent, and I experienced something unanticipated. Empathy. Stephanie, I stated kindly, youths aren't accountable for their guardian's errors. Your daughter merits every chance to excel, despite our past. She brushed tears from her eyes. I'm attempting to instruct them otherwise. Instruct them to evaluate folks by their traits, not their finances or occupations. That's all any of us can accomplish, I responded. Endeavor to improve from yesterday. As the night concluded, Trevor and I positioned on the lodging terrace, overlooking the Chicago horizon. A horizon I'd assisted in erecting with my own palms those decades past. Dad, do you ever ponder what might have occurred if we'd remained at that nuptials? I contemplated it briefly. Frankly, son, I believe all transpired precisely as required. That degradation instructed us both something vital, that our value isn't set by others' judgments. It's set by how we handle others, how we confront hardship, and what we elect to construct with our existences. Trevor grinned. You know the finest aspect. The Hawthorne title is recalled for controversy and deceit, but the Mitchell title is going to be recalled for providing youths an opportunity. As we observed the urban lights sparkle beneath us, I comprehended that occasionally the utmost successes aren't about vanquishing your foes. They're about evolving into the type of individual who doesn't require foes whatsoever. Occasionally, the optimal vengeance is merely existing prosperously, caring profoundly, and elevating others en route. The frightened lone parent who entered that hall 5 years prior with his mismatched outfit and injured self-esteem was absent. In his stead stood an individual who recognized his value, not because his son was accomplished, but because he'd nurtured a son who utilized his accomplishment to improve the world slightly. And that, I reflected, was a heritage worth erecting. What would you have done in Austin's position? Share your ideas and remember to subscribe for additional tales of endurance, kinship, and surprising victory. Because occasionally, the utmost successes emerge not from settling scores, but from transcending them.